So currently in California, we have spent 24 billion taxpayer dollars since 2018. And during that same period of time, we have seen homelessness increase by 32% statewide. In my county of Sacramento, it's gone up 67% in the last few years. In the last 10 years statewide, we've seen an over 50% increase in homelessness. So when I got elected, I really wanted to dive into why we are failing in California to solve our homelessness crisis. That's what prompted me requesting this audit of homelessness spending. And so we put in the request last year. I was very thankful to get a bipartisan coalition of legislators together to actually approach this in a bipartisan way. And while it did get delayed slightly, I was really grateful to see the results come out finally this week. However, I will say that the results of the audit were a little more troubling than I had initially expected. Number one, despite these billions in spending, which we already knew, right, homelessness continues to rise in California. And I think more importantly, the state has failed to systemically track any information on where this money is going. Any outcomes that it is producing, right? We have zero system in place to actually assess the effectiveness of the programs that we're spending money on. The audit also looked at two large cities in California, San Jose and San Diego, and found very similar results that no one is actually tracking the effectiveness of the dollars that are being spent. And in most cases, we don't even have enough information to assess the programs that they're spending money on. So I think that is probably the most troubling of the findings, is that really across the board at the state and local level, we don't know where these dollars are going. For example, the audit looked at 5 state programs that the state specifically is funding. Only 2 of them had enough information to even assess their effectiveness. So we do know where the money is going from the standpoint of, the state or the local government allocated this amount to this program, right? But that is about where the information stops. After that, we don't know specifically the results that they got with that money. We don't know whether those programs were effective because there's no one actually tracking those dollars and finding out and asking the question. So at the state level, the 5 programs we assessed were Project Home Key. We have a homeless housing assistance and prevention program, a state rental assistance program, an encampment program, and then a CalWorks housing support program. Now, most of those are funded and then carried out by state agencies. I think what you're getting at is the right question, and this is what the audit also found, is at the local level, a lot of the dollars actually are sent to nonprofit outside service providers, right, or nonprofit organizations that are doing the actual work. What the audit found that I think was most concerning is that millions of dollars in just these 2 cities alone, millions of dollars have been sent to these outside service providers. But there has been no accountability on the results that those providers have actually gotten, right? And so, for example, San Jose and San Diego send a lot of their money to nonprofits to carry out specific programs, but they never actually give these programs any metrics to actually measure the outcomes. Project Home Key was one that had enough information for the auditor to semi-assess what was going on. Essentially, what the auditor looked at is, this is how much money the state's put into that program, and this is how many housing units were provided, and then compared that to the cost it would be to build those housing units from scratch. And they basically said, well, in that case, I guess you could argue it has been cost effective. This is the auditor talking. The problem is that in most cases, they didn't even have enough information to assess that simple calculation, right? And so I think their main recommendation in the audit report for the legislature was that the legislature needs to immediately pass legislation to mandate new reporting requirements on these state agencies that are carrying out these programs. And those state agencies also need to ask for information from local governments as well. That is kind of the next step in this process, is I'm working with some of my colleagues to hopefully move forward some legislation to implement that recommendation. $24 billion, it's billion with a B, it's a lot of money. It is, I think a lot of it has already been spent at this point. There certainly could be money still out there that hasn't been spent, but that has been sent down to local governments. And so, but you know, at the end of the day, every year, at least until this year when we have a down budget year, every year we've been pouring money into this problem. But what the focus has been on, and I actually had this conversation with the state auditor, much of the focus at the local level, and to a degree at the state level as well, is, are we hitting the deadlines for spending this money? The focus is on getting the dollars out the door, and very little focus is on, are these dollars actually working? And I think that is kind of the paradigm shift that we have to see in California, because if we don't, then we're not going to see real accountability. Sadly, I think in our state government, we have one of the largest bureaucracies in the entire nation in terms of a state government bureaucracy. And I think the scary part, and my fear, is that this is not necessarily an outlier, right? This, I think, is indicative of the way our state bureaucracy operates. Unless they are told or forced to report back on certain things, they're probably not going to do it by default. And so that's where I think it's really important that the legislature, and in a large part the governor, needs to be a part of this too. He needs to take leadership and really require that his agencies are reporting back actual outcomes. But instead, what the governor has chosen to do during his tenure is measure his success on homelessness by how many dollars that he is spending. The state's currently facing a $73 billion budget deficit. I think that, you know, there's not a lot of good news there, but one of the bits of good news might be that it could slow down the amount of dollars that we are spending to solve this crisis and continue to not get results, right? And so, you know, my message is really going to be, obviously, we need to fix these transparency issues, implement new reporting requirements, but we also need to have a real conversation about freezing investments until we are able to actually track the dollars that we're spending. I think it's really irresponsible for the state to continue pouring money into programs when they don't even know if they're working. This audit was just the first step in a much larger process to reform our state's approach to homelessness. The question is, are we going to be able to find bipartisan support for the changes that are necessary to fix this and to actually get results in California? I think I would have to say that time will tell on that one. One last note that I would make that I think was really interesting in my discussions with the state auditor is that in the report they break down like 3 phases of homelessness. So they have in the first phase, you know, you're focused on preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place. The second phase is on people currently experiencing homelessness. And then that third phase is people actually exiting homelessness and moving into permanent housing. One of the things that the auditor noted to me that I found very compelling is that we think that a lot of the money that's being spent in California is being directed at that middle phase, the people that are currently experiencing homelessness. But not nearly enough investment is happening to get people out of the cycle of homelessness and move them into that third phase where they're exiting homelessness. I think that is what we really need to start focusing on in this state. Is obviously we need to provide mental health and substance abuse and things to get people back on their feet. But ultimately, we have to get people out of the cycle of homelessness. And if we can't do that, then we really shouldn't be spending these taxpayer dollars.
If you haven't checked out CaliforniaInsider.com, we highly recommend you do that now because we're going to have a lot of news and videos there. And on top of what we have there right now, we're building a really big platform to cover what's happening in California so you can be informed. We're going to have more shows, more videos from all aspects of life in California. Go to CaliforniaInsider.com and we'll see you there.